Our moment of triumph may not have lasted all that long, but that has always been the way. The world often needs saving. Primal tempering has been cured. Before we could even celebrate that monumentous feat, towers appeared all around Eorzea, and Fandaniel announces to all present that he wishes to bring about the final days. Thancred and Urianger have returned from their foray into Garlemald, though Urianger has chosen to stay in Alamigo for the time being. The information he has to report is crucial to explain what may happen with the towers. The nation is rent asunder, a deserted wasteland. Those who were fighting in the war for succession are gone. They appear to have given up the fight. Instead, they build, all at the same time. Nobody is around to bark orders at them. Nobody took a break. Yet, they all build the same, striving for one goal: to build a monstrosity unlike ever seen before. It was as if they were tempered. If Fandaniel can bind Bahamut to his will, then maybe he can do the same with the population. The Alliance wants to have a meeting over the information learned about the towers and what Urianger and Thancred have learned as well. We are to leave for Alamigo post-haste. The meeting begins and we exchange information. As we know, the towers have popped up all over Eorzea, so what else could they do but dispatch their men to investigate it? Yet, when their scouts returned, they tried to kill them. Using the Porxies cured them of this enchantment and allowed them to give a detailed recount of what happened. As they approached the towers, they heard an ear-splitting roar. From then on, it was blank. That isn't all. It seems like the Amalja aren't the only ones missing people. All of the beast tribes are. They were being escorted by black-robed figures. When the Ishgardian knights captured one of them and removed their garbs, they were donned in Garlean armor. The Garleans are the common thread throughout, and if tempering is involved, there are only a few they can trust on this scouting mission. Those individuals are Arenvold and Fordola. Both are immune to the tempering, and both perfect for the mission. Doubtlessly worried about his friend, Alphino and him discuss the mission at hand. He clearly understands the risks and will use his gift if it means it will help the Alliance in any way possible. Everyone is counting on them to investigate the towers, and they will have to give it their all. His heart is set on this decision, and we will not stand in his way. While they work on the tower, we want to deal with this Lunar Bahamut. Luckily, just as this thought crosses our mind, Tataru calls us on our link pearl and tells us that Estinian is in Ishgard. We search every ilm of Ishgard, but there is no sign of him. Not even Ishgard herself is aware that the Azure Dragoon has returned home, as there is no fanfare. So instead, we wait by the airship dock and try to catch him leaving, which actually worked. He has been avoiding Kryl and Tataru all day, but if they have sent us as well, then the task must be of import. We tell him about the Telophoroi and Lunar Bahamut. This gives him the idea to go to Azizla, as Tiamat resides there. Weirdly, it hasn't been all that long since we were last in Azizla. Tiamat is in a whole other section we didn't visit, however. We are to assume that she is still shackled here all the same, though her remorse shackles her more than any bond she has been bound in. Estinian visited Tiamat after the Dragon Song War, and she told him that her hatred for our kind has extinguished long ago, but the sin of reviving Bahamut still burns within her to this day. Speaking to the mighty worm, it is clear that she does not know what is happening on the outside world, so we tell her what the Ascians are again doing to her beloved. It causes her to roar out in rage and despair. Even after all of these years, the Ascians torment her and her children. When will the suffering end? The question Estinian has come here to ask her is, what does she intend to do for the crimes committed against her children? She yearns with all of her body to destroy the Ascians, but she was the one who summoned Bahamut originally, and you know what happens to those who summon a primal. They are tempered right there and then. If she were to come face to face with her beloved, she might end up losing herself. 2 great worms attacking all of Hydaelyn would be something mortals could not contend with. What she is unaware of is that we have a cure for tempering, so we ask her again, what does she intend to do? Hydaelyn saw to it to save her kin after their star perished. She owes it to her and all of mankind who suffered for her sins. If she has a chance to make amends, to put Bahamut's memories to rest, she will fight alongside us. G'raha and Eorzea will look into her tempering to see if it is the same as the kobolds prior, while we are to look for a way to deactivate these bonds. He gives us a spirit vessel with the royal blood on it, so any node nearby listens to our commands. We find the means to release the bonds, but Alphinaud will have to stay behind and activate it manually. When returning to the others, the research they looked into stated that her soul was indeed the same as the kobolds, so theoretically it should work all the same. The only difference being the vast amount of ether we are contending with. One thing may be in our favor, however. She doesn't see Bahamut as something to revere, but as an equal, meaning that her tempering isn't as severe. But theories are all talk, let's put them to the test. Alphinaud is commanded to remove the ethereal dampening nodes, and Angelo does their thing. As the treatment goes on, she remembers more and more things about her past. Rather than being stuck in an eternal loop of Bahamut's misguided resurrection, she can remember the original Bahamut, of how they flew south to Mericidia together and gave birth to numerous children. Men came to their shores but avoided them because they feared dragonkind. Yet after some time, they came to seek their counsel. Nobody was wiser than the dragons, so they had Bahamut run their civilization, and for the first time, peace and harmony was had between man and dragon. That was until the men of Allag came and slew Bahamut. In her rage, she heeded the words of the Ascians and summoned her beloved. The rest we know all too well. Eorzea is all but spent, so G'raha and us lend her the final amount of ether she needs to complete the procedure. There is no telling if it worked until we remove the bonds. Alphinaud is commanded to remove them, and at first, it seems like we failed. But she rises to atone for her sins. Just as she rises, so too does Lunar Bahamut. They have sighted him in Paglth'an, accompanied by a horde of dragons, and they are heading for the biggest Amalja settlement here in Eorzea. Apparently, the primal does not temper anyone, meaning that anyone can fight the primal regardless of whether or not they have the echo. All the grand companies send their forces to support the Amalja and prevent Fandaniel's plans for the final days. Estinian rides with Tiamat, and we head to Old Dar to secure ourselves an airship to the front lines. Long have the sweeping plains of Paglth'an been home to the nomadic Amalja. Though the herding of livestock keeps them constantly on the move, the permanent settlement of Zolm-Ak forms the seat of power and center of their society. It is there that Telophoroi would wreak destruction, dispatching a vast host comprised of both imperial soldiers and tempered dragons, with Lunar Bahamut at its head. Yet even against these heretofore unimagined foes, the Amalja stand strong, with Estinian, the recently freed Tiamat, and the Eorzean alliance at their side, and eager to turn the tide. Both men and beastmen are joined in fighting against the Telophoroi. We put the dragons of Mericidia out of their torment, as we cannot save those whose flesh has been altered. As for the Garleans, they can still be saved, so we try not to mortally wound them. Overhead, we see a great worm do battle with one another. Tiamat is accompanied by Estinian, and together they deal some decent damage to Bahamut. In the end, an exchange of blows is done, which sends both great worms cascading to the ground below. This gives us time to approach Bahamut and fight him, as he can no longer fly away. Though this may be a copy of the original primal, his strength is still the same. The Elder Primal does not fall easily, but we are able to bring our fellow scions to the front lines with us, and together we put an end to the shade of Bahamut, saving Paglth'an. Tiamat thanks us for what we have done. Maybe now her beloved and her children may finally rest in peace, and she can finally move on. We are also greeted by the Amalj'aa Warchief. On this battlefield today, both men and beastmen have spilled blood defending their lands. He will never forget what we did here, and from this day forth, he will treat mankind with favor, for we are allies. You know what they say, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and now they know who their true enemy is, the Garleans. Sometime earlier, inside the Paglth'an Tower.
What in Relga's name happened here?
The gods only know. But you can bet these poor sods aren't here by choice.
Quickly! We've got to get them free!
Get back!
No! What have I done?
It's too late for them! We're leaving, now!
No! No! Don't you dare! We came together and we're leaving together!
And thus we have made allies with the Amalj'aa. With good news, we return to Ul'dah and intend to report to the Sultana. Except she greets us at the airship bay. She wishes she could welcome us with better news, but that isn't possible. The scouts sent to the tower have returned. Yet, Arenvald was gravely injured and dragged back to civilization by Fordola. His current condition is unknown, but their best chirurgeons are working on him as we speak. Upon hearing this news, Alphino's darkest thoughts have become true. He races towards the infirmary as both Estinian and us give chase. Fordola is already here and has been waiting for some kind of news. Alphino is in such a distraught state that he begs the chirurgeon to tell him anything about Arenvald's condition. We have to tell him to calm down and think. This isn't helping. Though Fordola likes to hide her emotions, we can see that she too is also distraught about Arenvald. But she saved him and brought him back here, and we're thankful for that. Yet, Alphino blames himself. He thought something bad was going to happen. He just knew it was. Maybe if he'd been there, he could have done something. Fordola shoves him. Do what? Get tempered. You can't save everyone. Not even the bloody warrior of light can. It is a collision of a pure realist and an idealist. He believes that all life is precious and should be saved, but she thinks that those thoughts will get you killed. He has always been an idealist to a fault. It happened with the Crystal Braves, but the world has often needed idealists with dreams such as his to give realists the strength to push forward. We can't do anything to help here, so instead we return to our friends in the Fragrant Chamber. It is here that we learn what the scouts discovered. The towers hold captive beastmen who call forth their primal. They also resemble the monstrosity Thancred and Urianger observed being built in Garlemald. It seems like Lunar Ifrit wasn't the only entity summoned. Inside each tower, there are different beast tribes, summoning different primals. However, their strength is much weaker than Bahamut, therefore the Grand Companies will deal with them. The Scions could use a much-deserved rest. The Amalj'aa have agreed to join Ul'dah in friendship because of our heroism displayed at Paglth'an. This is the first true step to peace between men and beastmen. She hopes that their newfound relationship will convince other tribes to join them. We return to the Rising Stones as we need to regain our strength for the battles to come. Kral knows we're exhausted, but begs for a moment of our time. We now understand how the towers function, but we do not know what they intend to do with them. As the Telophoroi's goal is the destruction of this star, we are going to need help. Which is why Kral will petition Garlean for aid. Though Garlean has boundless knowledge, they believe in non-intervention. They fled Idleshire instead of helping Eorzea fight the Garleans. They refused to help us when the 7th Umbral Calamity was reaching its climax. Maybe the threat of the final days will make them rethink their non-intervention policy. Whilst there, she also wishes to look into the Ethereal Sea and Hydaelyn. She hasn't made her will be known to anyone, not even her greatest champion. The last time she spoke to us directly was after the Dragonsong War. Kral wonders if there is some sort of force that is blocking communication between us because nothing would explain why she doesn't want to give her counsel if we needed it, especially considering we were fighting the Unsundered and the Heart of Zodiac. She is resolved to leave, but doesn't want to leave the Scions a member short at this point in time. So it comes to Estinian. The story unfolding will decide the fate of this star, and the Scions are going to be playing a major role. Will he join us? He ponders for a moment and looks towards Alphinaud. He is an idealist to a fault, and he is a realist. He sees the world as it is, not the way he wants to see it. Yet Alphinaud's dreams and ideals have inspired people to fight, to win. He's seen it in Ishgard, in Alamigo, and it gives true to his ideals whilst making his doubts a lie. We have proven to him that some dreams are too important to let go of. If we have need of his strength, then we shall have it. After everything we've done, how could he refuse? As Estinian has accepted the request, Kral can now leave for Garlean, knowing that all is right in this little corner of Eorzea. Meanwhile, in the Imperial Palace, Xenos is on the search for a new weapon. He is surrounded by all the arsenal Eorzea has to offer, yet none are to his liking. Though Lunar Bahamut was slain and their plans went awry, the seeds have been sown, and all they have to do is wait for them to quicken. The hour draws near, and it is time he chooses a weapon for battle. There is one he had been meaning to test. It's not quite the weapon Fandaniel was expecting him to take, but it seems rather appropriate. The Scions have had their full of rest. It is time we do something. Or rather, we would if any sort of information were coming our way. At most, all we know is that lunar primals have popped up everywhere, yet the Grand Companies always slew them. A resistance herald arrives to our door and asks that we be present in a meeting in Alamigo. It will discuss everything we know about the Telophoroi and their plans, and what we should do about them. Also, the beastmen have been invited to join the council as well. We hope they will join us in the fight against our common foe. We arrive at the council along with the chieftains of the various beast tribes. We tell them what exactly has happened to their captured civilians. They are angered and wish to retrieve them immediately, but that isn't an option. If an ordinary person enters the tower's vicinity, they will be tempered on sight. An individual with the echo will be forced to contend with the primal. Rather than focusing our sights on saving the captured, we should instead turn our eyes towards denying them the ether they need to do the summonings. We are surrounded by masters of their craft. Together, we can stop the Telophoroi's plan. To mark the occasion, I.III wishes to name our fellowship, and who better to give it a name than us? We decide to name it the Grand Company of Eorzea, the same name Alphinaud chose for his Crystal Braves, only this time it doesn't seem like a lofty ideal. Tears well up in his eyes as his dream of uniting Eorzea under a single banner has finally come true. Alphinaud has dreamed of this day his whole life, yet even now he cannot forget the Crystal Braves. They too made their declarations against the conflicts to come, to stand proud as a united Eorzea, and we know how that chapter ended. Kane Senna joins the conversation. She wishes to use Alphinaud's previous failure to their success. The Sylphs have a wide range of communication that will prove useful for the Grand Company of Eorzea. Therefore, she wants a report of what caused the Crystal Braves to fail, and what the Sylphs could do to avoid the same problems Alphinaud fell for. Before Alphinaud puts pen to paper, he wants to ask the previous members of the Crystal Braves why they joined, why they think it failed, and why did some members stay behind and join the Scions. Graha and Alisaie are sent to ask the more unruly members, as they wouldn't want Alphinaud to do it. Instead, we are to speak to Riol and Alian. The reason they stayed behind to join as Scions is because they regret not being able to warn us about Ilberd. They had hoped that by becoming Scions and serving the cause, they would redeem themselves. As for why it failed, it was because everyone could join. If someone were joining for glory or wealth, then they could. Why do you think the Scions can function with such a ragtag group of individuals? It is because Tataru made sure that every member who joined was of the same purpose. With this knowledge in hand, we should return to Gridania and meet with Alisaie and Graha to hear what they had learned from the other members. They gathered enough opinions to form a picture, but she must warn him. They are quite harsh, but no less vital to his report. He will meet with us at Little Solace once he has added their opinions to his own. We meet with Elder Frixio here. The Sylphs have great connections, but they have never communicated for war, so they will appreciate any kind of help we can provide. Strangely, Alphinaud is seen racing towards us as quickly as he can. Apparently, a Garlean envoy has been sent to Gridania, and that envoy has requested that both he and Alisaie are present in the meeting. The envoy is Forchenol Levear, their father. It has been quite some time since he has seen either of his children. That could be one of his reasons for coming. We apologize to Elder Frixio for cutting the meeting short and hand over the report. Together, we move to the Lotus stand post-haste. What should have been a happy reunion of the Levears is quickly soured. Forchenol was Louis-Soir's biggest opposition. He opposed Louis-Soir when he wanted to intervene with the 7th Umbral Calamity, and his position has remained unchanged. The Garlean way of life is to chart the course of history, not change it. He came here to deliver the Forum's answer to our request. Garlean will not intervene in the conflict between Eorzea and the Garleans. He does not believe that the final days are upon us. This is no more than one of our petty squabbles. If the final days were truly upon us, they would know. He is truly making a mistake. The Telophoroi mean to kill everyone on Eorzea, including themselves. They may think that they are safe on their little island across the waves, but they aren't. They will come for us all. Forchenol sighs. He had thought that letting Alphinaud and Alisaie leave would have given them some discipline, but it seems like he was wrong. Eorzea has made fools of them both. He opposed Louis-Soir because his only solution was to go to war. Wars bring death and devastation. Those who win are scarred for life. It is the duty of the learned to avert such tragedy. To ignore the plight of those one might conceivably save is not wisdom, it is indolence. Words II.I. had once said that we repeat. We share their misguided ideals, but they should know better. From now on, they will no longer bear the Leveilleur name. If they wish to walk the path of ruin, then it will no longer be of his concern. He has come to say what he intended to say, and any further discussion would be meaningless. Alisaie tries to object to this, but is stopped by Alphinaud. There is nothing we could say to convince him. He was merely a representative of the forum. We get the call from Kryl. The meeting went as she feared. She tried questioning people here about the final days, but they ignored every word she said. It was quite unnerving. Yet this could mean that they are hiding something from us. You may have noticed that he mentioned they'd know if the final days were upon us. What if he was speaking the truth? What if they know how the world will truly end? They seem concerned with the Telophoroi, but aren't willing to divulge any information. When inquiring about the ethereal sea and Hydaelyn, the forum banned anybody from providing her with any information. At every turn, they blocked our path, and that is why she is planning for us to come to Garlean ourselves. Maybe with all of us here together, we can investigate what is happening here in Garlean. But for now, we must contend with reality. The forum has refused our request for aid, and it falls to us alone to contend with the Telophoroi. But one question remains on our minds. What does Garlean intend to do if we fail? Before we can mull over our misfortunes, a sylph arrives, stating that they have news of import. The Garleans have marched through Zelf Atoll and are heading west to the Cartanu Flats. Ishgard has dispatched their army and is requesting the aid of the Grand Company of Eorzea. It is time that this fellowship proves its worth. An airship is meant to bear us over to the Cartanu Flats, but on our way to the landing strip, we run into Fordola. She insists we follow her. She leads us into a corner of Gridania, straight towards Arenvald, though he is bound to a chair. The chirurgeons say he will never walk again. His fighting days are over, but he wants Alphinaud to fight in his stead. To be the hero, he cannot. Though Alphinaud tries to protest that he isn't a hero, that isn't for him to decide. There are people out there who believe in him, and it is for them to decide if he is a hero. He will entrust his hopes and dreams to us, just like he did for Alba and Auli. The weight of these burdens seems too heavy for Alphinaud to hold, especially after everything that has happened. He sees himself as a silly idealist. But Arenvald reminds him that he has come this far, and that should count for something. Those words have opened Alphinaud's eyes and have dispelled his lingering doubts, just in time for the battle to come in the Cartanu Flats. Garlean has refused to help us. We do not know the Telophoroi's plan, and their numbers vastly outweigh ours, but we have come here to fight against the final days as one grand company. We will do what we always do and fight against those our allies cannot. We do not know why they chose this fateful field to be their battleground, but we will fight with all of our strength. Our primary targets are the Lunar Primals. We do not know what they seek, as they flee unexpectedly during battle, but they cannot evade the Scions for long. The Telophoroi try to stall us here with sheer numbers, but it isn't enough to stop us. G'raha will hold them off here with Alisaie. Y'shtola, Thancred and Urian J are to head east, whilst Alphinaud, Estinian and us are to head west in search of Lunar Primals. As the Scions spread out across the field, Alisaie and G'raha take the fight to the Telophoroi. The Garleans we contend with have already gone too far. The tempering has altered their flesh and therefore cannot be cured. We instead put them out of their misery. With the rest of them slain, we have time to cure the beastmen of their tempering. Fandaniel raises his hand and activates glyphs to appear around the Cartanu Flats. According to Y'shtola, the Cartanu Flats seems to conceal an etheric confluence, like the pillars of the Azim Steppe, but on a far greater scale. If the lunar primals are able to destroy the glyphs, it will obliterate the confluence in its entirety. The disruption of ether would cause chaos among the elements, prompting earthquakes, floods, and tempests large enough to lay the realms to waste. We must protect the glyphs at all costs. Thancred, Urianger, and Y'shtola contend with Lunar Odin, and are successful in defending the glyph. Meanwhile, Grahatir and Alizé prepare to lock swords with Lunar Ravana. They too are successful in defending the glyph against the Lord of the Hive. At that self-same moment, we stand shoulder to shoulder with Alphino and Estinian, reserved to lay Lunar Ifrit low. Lunar Ifrit was the one who bound Arenvald to the chair, the one who caused Alphino all this grief. We said that we would give our regards to the Telophoroi. As long as we draw breath, we shan't give in. Lunar Ifrit is slain, and every glyph has been secured. Fandaniel's plans have been thwarted. He is beginning to see why Lord Xenos thinks so highly of us. Not that this has changed anything. We have merely earned ourselves an extended stay of execution. He disappears in his dark rift, along with the glyphs. The battle is over, but at what cost? Many men and beastmen have lost their lives. Even the Garleans are being used against their will for Fandaniel's twisted plans. Again, we couldn't save everyone. An Amalja warrior tells us that we have done what we can. We have saved more than they thought was possible and restored the minds of their tempered brethren. There wasn't any more we could do, and that was enough. So please, hold your heads high. Everyone on the battlefield agrees with this statement. It was a victory at a great cost, but a victory nonetheless. We must stay strong and forge ahead. One battle at a time. We'll get there. Following the Battle of Cartanu, a perfect assessment would be that the Grand Company of Eorzea can battle such things as these without the Scion's aid, meaning that only one path lies before us, is going to the city, replete with knowledge. Garlean. Meanwhile, in the Garlean capital, Xenos is seen standing around a dozen Eorzean bodies. The weapon he has chosen to brandish is a scythe. Fandaniel reports that his plan of redirecting the ether from the Cartanu Flats was a failure. Where will they get the ether now? The obvious solution would be to draw on the resources a little more closer to home, but that would require our dreamer to dream a little bit more deeply. Xenos tells him to do it anyway. The dreamer won't complain. Then Fandaniel will begin with the preparations at once. With the gateway of the gods complete, all that remains is to gather the necessary ether, and their prize shall be within reach. The time has come to fulfill your heart's desires, my desires, to relieve those wretched creatures of their meaningless existence.
While I await you, I shall drink a sea of souls and gorge myself upon the darkened moon. Then you shall come to me, all roiling rage and rancor. And the stars shall bear witness to our final contest.
Y'shtola is analyzing the ether current here in Mordona. It is just as she feared. The ether is waning. The rest of the Scions return to deliver the same message. Everywhere the towers are, the ether currents have dramatically decreased. As you get closer and closer to the towers, the ether is reduced further. There can only be one explanation. The towers draw upon the lands itself to summon the primals. We must return to Tartaru and have her relay our findings to the Grand Company of Eorzea.
Hear me. Hear me. Hear me. Hear me. Darkness comes, and with it, the end. The fate of the star is in your hands.
Everything all right back there?
At solemn dawn, grim purpose shines in gazes cast toward moonlit sky. Thus does our final curtain rise, your steps to guide what end betides.